only saved by faith and grace alone, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Who here used to celebrate Christmas every year? And when you celebrated Christmas, was it to Satan, to Satan, to Satan, to Satan? Why did people stop celebrating Christmas?
Winter festivals, Saturnalia, Mithra, Nimrod, Tammuz, and then they got rid of Jeremiah 10.
What if I told you Christmas is not associated with Christianity? December 25th, celebrate the birth of Mithra. Christmas is really the worship of Saturnalia. Why did you stop celebrating Christmas? Jeremiah 10. Oh yeah, that's another one. We're going to be covering all these things today, believe it or not. And we're going to see if Christmas, December 25th, has its origins in these particular ancient feast days. You're only saved by faith and grace alone, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Who here used to celebrate Christmas every year? And when you celebrated Christmas, was it to Satan, to Satan, to Satan, to Satan? Why did people stop celebrating Christmas?
Winter festivals, Saturnalia, Mithra, Nimrod, Tammuz, and then they got rid of Jeremiah 10.
What if I told you Christmas is not associated with Christianity? December 25th, celebrate the birth of Mithra. Christmas is really the worship of Saturnalia. Why did you stop celebrating Christmas? Jeremiah 10. Oh yeah, that's another one. We're going to be covering all these things today, believe it or not. And we're going to see if Christmas, December 25th, has its origins in these particular ancient feast days. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another live stream. I think we're in week 7 of the COVID-19 lockdown here in Australia. They're slowly starting to ease on the restrictions, except for here in Victoria. But that's another topic. But greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We hope everybody's doing well. We have another special guest presentation, and we're excited to have this brother join us. Obviously, we're a little bit earlier today than normal, seeing this brother's coming all the way from the East Coast of America, New York City, Brooklyn. But I'll let him get into all that stuff. I don't sound as cool as him when he says it. But they might think so there in Australia, in America. They apparently they love our accent over there. But we're excited to have him on here. We're going to be doing a little bit of a presentation. But if I can bring him in right now, we've got Alfredo Valentine, also known as the BKapologist. Welcome, brother.
Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BKapologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city. Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping?
Hey, what's up, mate?
What's going on?
I'm just translating that for the people in Australia that doesn't know what that means. That means how are you, mate?
Basically.
But But how's things over there? How are you, sir?
It's good. We living under this dystopian environment. Everybody wearing masks and spending 6 feet away from each other. I mean, it's really crazy. I never thought we would have to. As Christians, historically, we've dealt with plagues before, but this is the first time for us in the modern age that we now get to have a somewhat of a similar understanding like our spiritual ancestors did in the first century. So it's kind of crazy.
It is. It's crazy, and it's like for me personally, I'm looking at how are we as a community, looking at how different Christians are dealing with this situation. You know, you've got the end day, you got the end day crew,
right.
You know, you've got
pre-tribulation, post-tribulation,
yeah, and then you've got the. It's funny because, you know, I don't know what your view is. Obviously, this is not a sign of the end, but we've become the minority of you know, when Christians are put on the forefront these days as far as how they're dealing with this this pandemic or whatever, you know, tribulations that go on. They never go to, say, like a conservative Presbyterian to ask his view on the situation. Right. They have to go to like the
most extreme fringe person possible.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Because it's more fun when you do that. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is more fun. Yeah.
But I mean, I think we have a rich tradition of helping those who have become sick via plagues. You know, Saint Basil is the first person to create the hospital that we know of today. You know, and Christians were the ones who created hospice care, you know, orphanages, you know. So this is what we do. This is what we bring to the table because of the gospel, you know. And today, you know, we know hundreds of thousands of workers right now, first responders to the plague, who are believers, and they're carrying on this ancient tradition of putting ourselves at risk to serve other people. Like, we're still doing that today. So I think that's commendable, you know.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I've got you on here, you know. And it's funny, I was reading about Basil a couple weeks back when I was reading about the early church fathers.
Right.
And we did a lesson on how early Christians did deal with plagues in the 2nd century in Rome. And they were the ones on the forefront there spreading the gospel and helping people. And I think it's important, you know, everybody knowing the background that I've come from. When you have no understanding of real history,
right?
You can easily get swayed into these fringe groups, you know, and then now you're running around like a headless chook. But you know, if you could give the audience maybe a bit of background about yourself before we get into today's topic, that'd be great.
Okay, well, I am BKapologist. I mean, my real name is Alfredo Valentin. I am Puerto Rican, you know, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I've been a Christian now for over 30 years. I guess I've always been an apologist without even knowing it. You know, when I first became a Christian in New York, you know, hip hop was very pro-Black. You know, you had Poor Righteous Teachers, Brand Nubian. The Malcolm X film came out with some Spike Lee. So everybody's wearing their dashikis and the, you know, Black medallions. And I was in college at the time. So, you know, and I'm baby Christian. I'm like 3 months in the faith. All I know is the Gospels and maybe the Book of Acts, and that's it, you know. But, you know, you share what you know, and I would be confronted by these various paradigms, you know, the Muslims and the 5%ers and the Nuwabians, you know, Hebrew Israelites, you know, and they would throw scriptures at me that I didn't even come across yet. So I didn't know what to do. And, you know, I was honest. It's like, hey, I never read that yet. I'll get back to you, you know, go back home and do my own research and realize 90% of the time you could refute what they were saying if you just read maybe 10 verses prior or 10 verses after that particular verse they showed you. And unbeknownst to me, what I was doing is creating an apologetic, a defense for the gospel. Now, I didn't know the terminology back then, but that's what I was doing. And, you know, I've always had a heart for, you know, the urban landscape. You know, that's where I'm from. That's the culture I grew up in. And, you know, I want to help those who are around me to have the grace that I've received through Christ. But you got to do it in a way that they can understand. You know, you have to contextualize the gospel. So that's where the urban part of apologetics comes in, you know. So it's not a brand new denomination or anything like that. It's just it is a very specialized ministry. It's no different than a campus ministry or a single ministry or a married ministry. You know, it's a very specialized ministry dealing with urban communities and understanding and contextualizing the gospel in a manner that that particular people group can understand.
And I think it's a very overlooked ministry, because a lot of people now in, say, the urban communities, even here in Australia, they're starting to question, because we're all raised up in Christian houses, you know, traditionally, but then they start to question, you know, but why is there evil in the world, and all these sorts of stuff. And then a lot of the churches that we like the minority groups that are involved in, they don't, the pastor doesn't have actually any you know, skills in apologetics, if you get what I'm saying.
Right.
So then, you know, we tended to like join the gangs and jail and whatever else
Right.
the minority groups, or then they start joining these cult groups like the Hebrew Israelites over there in the United States. You have like the 5%ers,
right,
Nation of Islam, and all that sort of stuff.
Well,
You know,
I mean, it's more than just not being able to answer the questions. It's also not affirming another person's humanity. You know, so if you're not completely sold out to how we express our faith, it's not enough to have the faith, but you got to express it the way we do. And if your expression doesn't connect with theirs, there's going to be a conflict. And there isn't an affirmation of another human being, because we're all images of God. And for those of us who come from marginalized communities, that's paramount, you know, that someone could affirm and look at me and see me as somebody special, that, you know, I am also made in the image of God. I mean, there's a whole movement here called, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know, and not to get into all their paradigm, but the main thrust is Black people with darker pigment are humans, right? That's the thing. And even in the churches, sometimes you could be marginalized. And when that happens, you become more vulnerable to these other fringe elements outside the church. So.
That's a good point. You know, if you were down these ways, everybody would think you were Polynesian. They'd probably say, hey, this guy's Tongan.
It's great.
But if you like today's topic, you know, you can introduce yourself, introduce that, and then, you know, start screen sharing, because I know you got a PowerPoint presentation.
Sure. So, all right. So let me. All right. So yeah. So we're gonna talk about today, as you saw. Oh, by the way, that intro was crazy. I love that. That was.
Did you like that? That's Brother Sam.
Super thorough, man. Yeah. Yeah.
We did it because I did a lesson last year on Christmas. You know, doesn't have pagan origins, obviously, and then he took the audio from that and did some things. So hey, big shout out to Brother Sam here. He's the tech guy. He's just sitting here. He doesn't like the camera.
Yeah. So good. So can you see that?
Yep.
Great. So yeah, so basically what we're going to talk about today, it's a topic that usually comes up when one of these major holidays occur, right? Thanksgiving, Easter, Halloween, Christmas. Your timeline starts to get pummeled with all sorts of this holiday's pagan, that holiday's pagan, you know.
The holiday police.
The holiday police that come get you quick.
The memologists.
The memologists, that meme scholarship raises its ugly head. And you know, and for a lot of us, you know, there's those of us who are sincere in our faith, you know, these type of memes do resonate, because there's a part of us that we have a conviction that, you know what, I don't want to do anything that disrespects God, right? And that's a good thing to have in your heart, you know, but you have to really understand what these things are, you know, hoping that you don't, and they use that conviction actually against you. It's like, well, you really love the Most High, you got to stay away from these things, because these things are contrary to what the Most High wants you to do, right? And that's the thing that we're going to talk about today, right? We're gonna think this through, right? We're going to think this question out to its logical conclusion, right? So with that being said, the first thing you have to do in any conversation, whether it's online or person to person, you have to define terms, right? Because if you don't define the terms of the conversation, you're only going to talk past each other and nothing constructive will happen, right? So you want people to define what they mean so that you have a reference point for the rest of the conversation. So since we're talking about pagan holidays, right? What is the word pagan? Well, the word pagan means a person holding religious beliefs other than those of the main world religions, right? Again, a pagan is a person holding religious beliefs other than those of the main world religions. Now, the word holiday. The word holiday is a day of festivity or recreation when no work is done, right? A day of festivity or recreation when no work is done. So when you put that together, a pagan holiday is a day of festivity or recreation of a religious belief other than those of the main religions, right? So these are the terms, right? So now that we established the terms, we can now continue, right? And this is something that you can do with people when you talk about this particular subject. Like, well, when you say pagan holiday, what do you mean? And you can break it. Yeah, go ahead.
And it's a good point, because I think a lot of us have made, well, I've made this error of just taking someone's word for it and not actually saying things and then not actually understanding what you're saying.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And throwing terms out there. So it's a great
Right.
point. Thank you for that.
No, of course, yeah, no problem. And as a side note, in your personal Bible study, you know, when sometimes we think we know what a word means and we just assume that we understand the definition and we keep going. But if you take time out and humble yourself and say, you know what, let me see what this word really is. I think I know what it means, but let me check. Let me look at this Hebrew dictionary. Let me look at this Korean Greek dictionary. Let me look at this lexicon. And you'd be surprised that, you know, what you thought was a definition might not be. And it'll give you more clarity on the scriptures. But that was for free. That was for free. I just want to give you that little sidebar. But anyway, so this is a quote from one of my favorite scholars, Dr. Michael Heiser. In fact, if I could do a quick shameless plug, I will be having Dr. Heiser on my platform on May 25th.
Oh, nice.
Which is a Monday. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. But this is a quote about another academic that he knows by the name of Jordan Paper. He says, I have read Paper's book on polytheism called The Gods of Many. Jordan Paper is a practicing polytheist. He's retired now from teaching, but I still see him from time to time at SBL meetings. I know what he looks like. He's a practicing polytheist. And he was very transparent about his quote unquote faith. This is a scholarly meeting. He's not holding anything back here. He says, basically, this only works if you solicit this kind of contact. It doesn't just happen. You have to want it. And you have to do things to solicit it. And the powers, he would use these terms, the powers, the gods, the spirits will respond if you are open to that contact, to what they can do for you. And this was his faith, right? So this is a scholar. This is an academic who is a professing polytheist. And he goes to these academic seminars and he reads his papers. And he makes it very clear that if you're going to advocate any of these other, what we would call pagan deities, you have to reach out to them, right? You have to solicit their presence. You can't just trip and fall and ta-da, you're a pagan. It doesn't work that way, right?
Are you sure? Are you sure? Because I was told if you eat an Easter egg, you are now a Satanist.
Well, according to somebody, or according to someone who actually does worship other gods, he would say that no, that's not the case. You know, right. You have to have an intentional contact with that deity so that he can show up, right? So that being said, right, now the Bible is actually very clear about us not worshiping these other gods. Exodus 20 verse 5, you shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, right? We see this very early on in the Bible. God does not want you to bow down and worship other gods. Now, the word for bow down in the Hebrew is shachah, right? Shachah. And in the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, which is not the best concordance, but if you're just doing a baseline research of a particular word, it's fine. But it talks about to crouch, to fall down flat, to humbly beseech, reverence, right? It is to depress, to prostrate, especially reflective in homage to royalty or God, right? Obedience, to reverence, make to stoop, to worship. That's what the word bow down means, right? So you're doing something, you're being active in this form of shahar. The word to worship is abad, right? It's to work, to serve. And these are the various definitions that's used to translate the word abad throughout the Bible, right? To hold in bondage, to be enslaved, to be burdened, to cultivate, to be made slave, to be made subject, right? Worshippers, to work, right? So these are the two things we're looking at. We're looking at, God's telling us not to bow, right? Not to become bondage, right? So, but in order to do that, you have to have the intent to do so. You have to be mindful that I will now cultivate this relationship with this deity. I will serve, I will render service to this particular deity, right? So, and that's what God says to not do. Do not have the intention to go and contact these other guys, because I am your God. You are to pledge allegiance to me and me alone, right? Any questions you want to ask before I continue, or?
So we see clearly the Bible is telling us in order to like the God of Yahweh,
Yes,
you have to actually engage him. It's not enough to just say to talk with your mouth.
right.
There's an actual physical reverencing going on, like physical actions and things of that nature. So it's not even with. So you're saying that it's not enough to just say something or be vague with your intentions. It has to be a direct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yahweh has always wanted from day one to have an actual relationship with his creation, right? And all relationships is a back and forth, right? I talk, you listen. You talk, I listen. We consider each other. That's a relationship. And God doesn't want us to have that with any other being, right? So
it'll be almost like I said, if I was going out with a girl and she's my girlfriend, but the only thing I have is a picture of her on the wall. That's not a real relationship. Nobody would think that.
Or imagine, right? Let's say, using that same motif, let's say this is your wife, right? And the only thing you know about your wife is what you learned within the first 5 dates of the relationship. How great would that relationship be?
Well, not a great relationship. It'd be just the beginning.
Right. But it doesn't go anywhere. It's not progressive. It doesn't grow.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
So exactly. So, but with God, he wants us to engage. He wants us to be, have the intent to be with him and to grow in that intent as well. Right. You can't just stay at the beginning. You have to grow in your relationship, just like any other human relationship that you have, whether it's your parents, cousins, your spouse, right? So the relationship has to have intent and be progressive. So,
and the scholar that you quoted earlier from Michael Heiser, he said, him being a pagan, he said in paganism or in polytheism, it is the same kind of relationship that the deities, the other deities want.
Yeah, let's look at it again. He says this only works if you solicit this kind of contact. You have to solicit the contact. It doesn't just happen. You have to want it. You have to have to do things. You got to do things to solicit it, and the powers, the guides, the spirits will respond if you are open to that contact, right? There has to be some shahar. There has to be some abad going on in order for there to be a relationship with these deities, right? So now, with that understanding, the question to ask, are Christians actively soliciting contact, abad, shahar, with other gods during these holidays? In other words, who are Christians actively, abad or shahar, soliciting contact with? You know, are Christians actively engaging Saturn on Christmas? George, what do you think?
Well, growing up as a young Christian boy, when we had the Christmas tree in the house and we would go to church, whatever morning it was, Christmas morning, we would go and reverence Jesus.
Right. So you didn't beseech Saturn?
No, there was no mention of Saturn whatsoever.
There was no contact. There was no intent to talk to Saturn and engage with him in any way?
The only time I heard of Saturn back in those days was when we spoke about the solar system.
Right. What about Halloween, George? Were you actively engaging Shamin on Halloween?
Halloween is not a big holiday down here in Australia.
Okay.
Slowly coming up, though. It's slowly coming up. Slowly coming up.
Right. Or what about Easter? Were you actively engaging? Were you in Abad and Shahar, the fertility gods, on that day?
Never heard of them. It was all about he is risen.
Right. So remember, worship is the intent to have contact with a deity. Who are most people now with Halloween? You know, it's really about, in my country, it's really about dress up. You know, you dress up your little boy as Captain America. Your girl wants to be a princess or a ballet dancer. There is no transmission of Shamin during that process. Everybody just wants to, you know, look like their favorite.
The blood sugar levels.
That too. Getting candy. looking like your favorite superhero and getting as much candy as possible, because this is one of the few times your parents are going to allow you to have that serious sugar overdose, right? So, but again, in these or any other holidays, you have to ask, who is being solicited here? Who's being abad? Who's doing shahar to? Are you doing it to Saturn, Shamin, or the fertility gods, or is it Jesus, or is it Yahweh? Right? Because if it's Yahweh, then is it a pagan festival to begin with? Now, with that being said, what people will tell you is, but listen, these holidays have some very shady and murky origins. Right? There's some things in the past that were not godly. So why would you take part in something that has such a horrible and sketchy origin, right? Well, that's actually a genetic fallacy. Now, a genetic fallacy is a fallacy of irrelevance that is based solely on someone's or something's history, origin, or source, rather than its current meaning or context. This overlooks any difference to be found in the present situation, typically transferring the positive or negative esteem from the earlier context. Like you, for instance, George, imagine we still treated you based on what you believed in the past. Would that be fair to you?
Well, no.
Yeah, I mean, we know he follows Christ now, but you know, it wasn't too long ago that he was doing some other stuff.
That's right.
Right. So that would be irrational. That's actually fallacious, because 2 + 2 always equals 4, even if Hitler says it. Bottom line, right? It doesn't matter, Hitler. Right? Hitler, we all agree. I hope we all agree that this is a vile and wicked individual.
Hey, depending who you talk to, I've seen
some who you talk to, right?
I've seen some Hebrew Israelite videos. They were saying "Hail Hitler."
Yeah. But most mainstream people who have a cursory view, at least, of world history, they would agree that this was a bad person. But if even Hitler said 2 + 2 is 4, it's still true, even though it comes from a bad person. Right? So even if you can show me that Christmas or Easter or these other holidays have had some scandalous things in the past, my question is, what's the intent? When you're having this festival and this celebration, who are you abad? Who's the shahach going to? Is it going to the pagan deities or to Yahweh? Right? That's the question you got to ask. And if it's Yahweh, then is it pagan? Right? That's the question you have to ask. So now, you know, we talk about these different days. Even in the first century, there were some issues, right? So in Romans 14, Starting in verse 5, it says, one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. However, whoever regards one day as special does so to the Lord. Whoever eat meat does so to the Lord. For they give thanks to God, and whoever abstains does so to the Lord and give thanks to God. For none of us lives for ourselves alone, and none of us dies for ourselves alone. If we live for the Lord. If we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life, so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. So what we're seeing here is a situation in the church in Rome on a disputable matter, right? There are some Christians that say, hey, I believe in God, so I don't eat these meats that were sacrificed to gods. Then there were other Christians that says, well, we eat the meat because we know those gods are not the gods that we serve anymore. So we could care less about those gods because our allegiance is Yahweh, right? Now, does Paul pick a side in this passage?
No.
No. What he does say is, like, whatever you do if you're doing it for the Lord, do it for the Lord, right? But don't, well, actually, let me go to the next slide, right? It says, therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. I am convinced, being fully persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that nothing is unclean in itself. But if anyone regards something as unclean, then for that person it is unclean. If your brother or sister is distressed because of what you eat, you are no longer acting in love. Do not by your eating destroy someone for whom Christ died. Now, this is a very nuanced topic because in the Greco-Roman Empire, everything was attached to some type of god, right? All the guilds, the marketplaces, they were all surrounded and sponsored by different gods. So if you wanted to get a good steak, you had to go to a particular temple to get the steak, right? Now, as a Christian, you no longer pledge allegiance to that particular deity. So you could care less about, Aphrodite or Artemis. You just know these guys know how to barbecue. So I'm going to go get me a good steak, and regardless of that God. But if you're with a Christian that has a conviction about not going there, then don't go with that Christian because you don't want to violate that Christian's conscience. Even though for you it's okay, but be mindful of the other brother or sister, right? Now, to get a little deeper with that, right? The word here for stumbling block is poroskoma, right? Which means to put a stumbling block, to furnish one on occasion for sinning. So you're setting up a situation. When you're putting up a stumbling block, Paul's saying you're setting up a situation for that person to sin. And of course, as Christians, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to set up situations for people to be saved, right? And then the word here for, actually, let me go back here for a minute. Stumbling block, the obstacle is peroskoma. So my bad. So the word for stumbling block is actually scandalon, right? And that is to a stick for bait or a trap. Generally a snare, a stumbling block, an offense, a trigger, the mechanism closing a trap down on an unsuspecting victim, an offense, putting a negative cause and effect relationship into motion. So what was happening was, even though you have these two different viewpoints of meat being sacrificed to idols, one person would say, well, the way I see it is the way you should see it. So you got to get with my program. And the other Christian would say, well, no, you got to see it the way I see it. And when you was doing that, Paul is saying you're creating an opportunity for sin to enter, and you're causing, actually it's scandal today. The word scandal is where we get the word scandal. So when you impart your private conviction on someone and try to force it on that individual, you're actually involved in scandalous behavior.
It seems to, if I could just,
Yes, please go ahead.
coming from my experience, and that word scandal, it seems to me like these fringe groups that we were talking about earlier, they thrive on these scandals, putting in these unnecessarily stumbling blocks. Using these so-called holidays as a tool to try to bring them into their congregation or group. It's so they're going against what Paul is saying here, and they're creating, as we can see, scandals.
And what you said was perfect, right? Because it goes with what the definition is. It's bait for a trap. So for a lot of people who get involved in these fringe paradigms, this is how they get trapped in, because they hear, "Hey, don't do Christmas, brother, because it's pagan. Don't do this." And that's like, that person is sincere and they want to do what God says and not offend God. So it makes sense to them. And they get lured in and they create a stumbling block and they fall into these fringe belief systems. So you're absolutely right. It's scandalous behavior when they use these holidays as a way to bring you into their belief systems. So absolutely. So now, the problem with this, right, when people say, well, if you practice or celebrate this holiday, then you are worshiping these other gods. Unbeknownst to people, when they say that, what you're actually exposing in yourself is that you have a very cheap sense of worship, right? And what do I mean by that? Like, if all it takes is for me to have this tree in my living room in order for me to worship Saturn, then all I need to be a Christian is to wear a cross on my neck. Now, of course, nobody would say that. It's like, I'm a Christian. How? Don't you see this bling bling I got on my neck? This cross? I'm a Christian. Like, yeah, it's a little bit more intense than that, right? But we don't have that same conviction when it comes to these other things, though. It's a cheap sense. It's like, again, where's the intent? Where's the shachar? Where's the yobad in the situation? All I gotta do is put a wreath on my door, and that's it. I'm automatically worshiping Saturn. I get an Easter egg, and I'm done. Right? So
that's what we were taught back in the camp. That's all you had to do to worship Satan.
Right.
Say Merry Christmas. You're worshiping Satan.
Right. But that's not relationships, and it's like nobody would model their relationship on that particular paradigm. It's like, well, I mean, imagine a spouse saying, "Listen, I love you because I show up, after work and I show up to the house. So obviously I love you because I'm here. Because I'm here. I could be somewhere else, but I'm here. So that's all that matters." That's a horrible marriage. Right? So
that is a horrible marriage.
It's a cheap sense of relation. And when people talk about the Easter egg and you're already in pagan worship, or the pumpkin or the Christmas tree, what they're saying stuff about themselves. They're saying that I have a very low level of worship, of relationship. It doesn't take much in my life to be in a relationship with something, which is very sad because, do you know what it takes to have a relationship at all? Like, this gets really deep. Like, when people make this argument, that's what I think. It's like, do you know how to have a relationship?
You wonder how their relationships are, like if they have friends.
Right. So now, if you want to play this concept that, if all it takes is you to be attached to a particular pagan situation, you're automatically worshiping that pagan. Well, we need to keep that same energy, as we say in America, right? Because let's see how your conviction holds when it comes to other things besides holidays, right? Like, for instance, Dove, right? Soap, I'm sure they sell this down under, right? Dove.
Yeah, very popular down here. Very popular brand here.
Well, did you know that the Dove, which is a global brand of soap, but there's a story also behind this logo. The soap brand itself was named after Aphrodite, who is the goddess of beauty and love. Dove was her symbol. Therefore, the company named its soap brand after the dove. Thus, the message from the company by using the logo symbol is that if you use this soap, your skin will look beautiful and smoother. So, brother, if you're washing with Dove soap, you're worshiping Aphrodite. Ak, what you doing?
Oh man, I better start using.
If we're gonna go by that line of reasoning, right? Then this is pagan worship.
There's gonna be a lesson next week in the camps.
If I catch any of you ox with the dove, that's it. You're out. But it doesn't stop there, though, right? Goodyear, right? The tires. You know, we see in America. There's the Goodyear blimp. It's part of the American culture when you see the Goodyear blimp.
That's massive brand down there too.
Okay, the shoe in the logo is the shoe of Hermes, who was the messenger god. He was extremely fast. The idea of a winged shoe was therefore appropriate as the company wanted to give the message of speed and reliability. So, brother, if you have Goodyear tires on, bro, you are soliciting the god of Hermes.
Well, that's the reason why I bought them. You know, I was like, I went to the tire dealer and I was like, look, I need tires dedicated to the god Hermes. Do you have some?
No other deity. It has to be Hermes.
Yeah. When I go to Kohl's and I'm like, I need to wash myself with the goddess Aphrodite. Please give me some Dove soap. Nobody's doing that.
Right. Exactly. But let's keep going, though. Let's keep going. Maserati. Right.
Well,
very
lucky I can't afford that one.
Well, yeah, but it's a very top tier car, right? It's you know, if you can afford this, you're doing pretty well in life, right? It is an Italian company that makes a luxury vehicle. Its brand message for the consumers is that it builds ultra luxury automobiles with classic Italian style. To reflect this message, the company created its trident logo after a mythical fountain of Neptune. The company thought it fit to have the trident logo because Neptune is the symbol of vigor and strength. Also, the statue of Neptune is located in the city of Piazza Meggiore, which was the company's home city. This is surely one of the popular logo symbols that we admire. So if you ever in this car, brother, you're also in pagan worship.
Yeah.
According to that line of reasoning, right? But let's keep going. NBC.
No way.
NBC. in New York, that would be Channel 4 in our channels here. The NBC peacock logo is one of the popular logo symbols that use mythology to convey its brand. Right? They know what they're doing, right? This is not a mistake. They know what this symbol is, right? It's the multicolored logo that has a peacock in the center. But the peacock in this design is from Greek mythology. The story says that Hera, who was the wife of Zeus, had 100 eyes, which were then translated to peacock feathers. This means that Zeus had the knowledge of seeing all. So, brother, if you're watching anything from NBC, you're also watching Hera.
We have to, like, if like you said earlier, if you want to be consistent in that logic, you know, no Christmas, no Easter,
right.
Whatever, you need to throw your TV out.
Basically,
you need to throw that TV out. You know,
but let's keep going.
What?
Nike? You like Nikes, bro?
You know, hey, I'm a what do they call them? A sneakerhead.
You're a sneakerhead? Well, guess what you are as well.
I'm wearing Grand Hill 2s right now. I'm big.
Look at that. So Nike, of course, is a global brand of sports shoes. Its logo design is a simple swoosh design, which is one of the most recognizable business symbols today. May look simple, but it's actually a great logo. The swoosh concept is derived from the wing of the Greek goddess of victory. Brother, your feet is in pagan worship. What are you doing, George?
Oh my gosh.
You got to throw them joints out of here, bro.
I'm not going to lie to you. I am, you know what? I'm not going to lie to you. Because I knew you had to, when I first came into this, I knew you had to be consistent. You couldn't deal with any paganism, right? Because, and I understood that. But then I started to see like the elders and that wearing Nikes and all these sorts of things. And I got confused a bit. I was like, hey, like you're telling us the Easter egg's pagan. But I know that the Nike, it's one of the first things you look into. And Nike's a big brand, as you said.
Right.
And I knew it was it had paganism involved in, you know, the branding and the concept and all that. So I stopped wearing Nikes for a time.
Oh wow.
You know, but
hey, you was being consistent though.
I was trying to be consistent, but you know what I mean? Common sense prevails. Praise God for that. It's like no one, you know, I'm gonna stop saying Wednesday because it's Odin's Day.
Well, you know, we're actually gonna get to that.
Are we? Oh, okay, sorry.
We're gonna get to that. So now this one hurts, right? Amazon. We all purchase things in Amazon.
I got Amazon Prime.
Exactly. And you know what else you have, brother? You have a nation of warrior women descended from Ares, the god of war. That's what you have.
Well, that's the reason why I subscribed, to be honest. You caught me.
So think about it. So that means if you're going to be consistent, I better not see you order anything from Amazon. No videos, no books, nothing. Because when you do that, you're engaging in pagan worship, according to their argument.
I'll tell you what, good luck to these people. Like, where are you going to live?
Right, exactly.
You'll go live in the bush somewhere, and I guarantee you, I'll find some source saying some pagans worship that tree.
Right.
But
we're not done, George. We're not done. We're not
Oh,
done.
my goodness.
Ajax, popular cleaner
hey.
here. I don't know if it's big out there.
That's big here. Everybody knows what Ajax is.
It's a household cleaning product by the Colgate-Palmolive company. This product is available in both powder and liquid form to be used on household and kitchen surfaces. Also available as a dish detergent. The Colgate-Palmolive company decided to have its name as Ajax because the Greek mythological figure was a mighty warrior who, quote unquote, cleaned up in battle. He needed no assistance from the gods, meaning that Ajax cleaner products are capable of cleaning up the household without assistance from any other products. So, brother, if you're cleaning your kitchen with Ajax, you are invoking a mighty Greek god warrior.
But that's why I buy the no-name brands. Not because they're cheaper, because there's no associated with pagan gods to the
right. So now you gotta throw away your cleaner. You know, your detergent, what you use to clean your bathroom. You gotta throw that out. You know, because it's pagan worship. What about the days of the week that you mentioned? Right. Sunday,
sorry,
Monday.
I spoiled the presentation.
That's okay. No, it's all good. It's all good. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. These are names of deities. And pick which empire: Babylonian, Greek, Roman, or Germanic. Right? Shamash, Sin, Negro, Nabu, Marduk, Ishtar, or is it Solus, Apollo, Luna, Diana, Mars, Mercury, or is it Helios, Silenus, Artis, Hermes, Zeus, Aphrodite, Cronus? You gotta throw away your calendar then, because if I ask you what you're doing tomorrow, what are you doing Monday? And you say, well, I'm doing this. Oh, so you do advocate the moon god because you said you're gonna do something on Monday.
Yeah. If we're being consistent.
If we're being consistent. And you know, we know they talk a lot about Sunday, right? Well, Sunday, you know, when you guys go to church, you're worshiping the sun god. Yeah. So what happens on the Sabbath then? You're worshiping Kronos or Saturn, or maybe it's Nurata, maybe you're old school and it's Babylonian. I don't, you know what I mean? What do you do then?
Half of them don't even know that the Babylonian one.
Right. So, but it's not just the days of the week; it's the months. January, right? Janus, the mighty one of portals and patron of beginnings and endings. February, a religion festival of purification. Mars, the Roman mighty one of war. April, indicating time of fertility. May, Mia, the Roman female deity of growth and increase. June, the mighty one of the marriage, the wife of Jupiter in Roman mythology. She was also called the Queen of Heaven. July, you worshiping Caesar if you have the month of July. August, Octavius Augustus Caesar, another emperor you're worshiping then. September, septum, meaning 7. Then you got 8, then 9 and 10. So I guess they give you a break in the fall.
And when you get down to the end of the year. They
give you a little break from the paganism. Now, so what's the conclusion, right? What is it then? Whatever you do, whatever in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the God, the Father, through him. Right? For the Christian, if this is what you're doing, whether you're eating pork or steak or you're putting up a Christmas tree, and a side note, I actually don't practice Christmas personally.
That's right. That's true.
You know, but I'm not going to look down on brothers and sisters when they put up the Christmas tree because I know they're not worshiping Saturn. Same thing with Easter. You know, I tend to stay away from the word. I tend to use Resurrection Sunday. But if someone says Happy Easter to me, I'm not going to throw a fit because I understand their intent. I understand who they're worshiping. So whatever you do, whether it's a holiday or not, whatever it is that you do as a man and woman of God, you're supposed to do it for Jesus.
That's right.
And if you do it for Jesus, you're fine. You know, and that's about it. So
thank you so much for that. And it's a good point. It's a good point. You're saying it's like if we believe all authority, all dominion, everything is under the footstool, like the earth and everything in it, the heavens is under Jesus. That means all things belong to him. And if we're doing things unto him, like it says, like we read it in Colossians, why are we worried? It's a new covenant, and it's deeper than wearing some Nike shoes.
Right.
Like you know. But if we got any questions in the chat, please. We got if you can take
sure. Let's do it. Let's do it. I will try. If I don't know, I will say I don't know, but I'll give it a shot.
Let's see some of the comments here. Latasha, I don't know how you say your last name. Malvu.
That's Sister Lala. I know her. What's up, Lala?
Looks like a French surname there.
Could be.
How you going, Latasha? We got Sister Michelle saying, howdy, family.
We got Black Smurf. What up, Black Smurf? What's going on?
Black Smurf. I've seen Black Smurf around.
Yeah. He's a regular.
He's always on those other channels. I've seen him.
Yeah.
Especially dealing with the Hebrew Israelites.
Oh yeah, he's really good at that. He's well equipped. That Black Smurf guy.
He needs to start making his own channel. Does he have a? That's
a great question. Do you have one, Black Smurf? Because you should.
You
really should.
Jump on here and help the cause, mate.
Yeah, you be getting it in the chat, man. Maybe it's time to, spread your wings a little, bro.
Agreed. Is my brother Naftali. What's up, bro?
What's going on, guys?
Good vibes. Monet saying blessings.
So yeah, man. Any questions about these dreadful days of paganism? Because who knows? Philae might be, a pagan deity for all we know.
Yeah, it's Italian, so it probably is. It says here, they said you bowed, and I've heard this argument, you bow down to pick up a gift from under the tree, you're worshiping it.
Wow, so they can trick you into worshiping God? Like, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You can't trick, look over there, where, bam, they hit you in the head and you wake up and now you're in the temple of Zeus. Like, it doesn't work that way, You gotta have the intent to the abad and to akhra, to shahad.
Like, can you just fall over and trip and start worshiping Jesus? Is that how it works?
Well, according to them, that's all it takes.
Hey,
let me throw on this gold chain, this cross on my neck, and I'm certified Christian.
I think they do that with the mitre. They just put a mitre around the head. I'm from the tribe of Zebulon.
And even what's funny too, the word church, right? Then you gotta stop using the word church.
Yep.
Because the word is kirch, which is circle. And we know that in pagans, they would create a circle to worship their God. So I guess we should stop having church then. because that word comes from that, right? Again, genetic fallacy.
The word ray, sun ray, like the rays of the sun, that comes from the Egyptian god Amin Ra, and things like that. Blacksmith says, I'm here to help y'all. Yeah, well, maybe we can maybe set up a podcast where we can talk about these things, man, and get you on, because you
like
seem
a panel,
like
a panel discussion. Yeah, no, Blacksmith gets it in, man. He definitely gets it in.
I need to get there. It says here, Brother PK Apologist was an awesome breakdown. Praise Jesus for a sound mind.
Thank you. It's only because of God and His Spirit, and nothing to do with me. So
it says, when Hebrew Israelites that don't worship Christmas tree, they asked me if I would play with the Ouija board, because it's the same thing.
It's not, because when you do the Ouija board, there's intent. You know what you're doing when you bring up the Ouija board. You're trying to channel spirits. That's intent. That's wrong.
Oh. You know what, BK? I would love, there's a topic, the Dunning-Kruger effect. The brother Mike put me onto this. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I wanted to talk about it. Maybe someone who's been in the field a lot longer, dealing with these people who suffer from Dunning-Kruger, and maybe have a panel on it. Maybe
is that
talk
like
about
a cognitive dissonance? Is that similar to that?
Yes. So you're like you get some knowledge, and then you think you're greater than what you actually are.
Right.
And we've seen that through and through.
Yeah, I would love to come back for that. That sounds great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
But seeing that there's no questions, maybe share your screen again with all your contact info.
Sure.
Hold on. And you can see the bottom there, the people that are watching. There's all the stuff there, but maybe you can show the screen.
Yeah, we'll do. Okay, hold on. All right, so you see that?
Yeah.
All right, so you can catch me Facebook, right? / BKapologist. You can catch me on Twitter / BKapologist. You can catch me on Instagram. That's / BK_apologist. YouTube, of course, / BKapologist, well, / BKapologist. And I also sell a line of urban apologetic inspired t-shirts. They now sell masks as well. And when you buy a mask from this company, proceeds will go to them buying actual surgical grade masks and give away. Right.
That's a good cause.
And so any t-shirt you see in my store also comes with, you can also buy a mask with that same design. And if you just want to contribute, there's my PayPal, which I'll put again into the chat.
Yes. Let's bless the brother. For those that are able to donate, there it is. PayPal me at BKapologist. If you can put that in the live stream chat, that'd be great. The brother blessed us today with some, it's funny that we have to do these types of classes. It's just common sense.
It's not that people don't have common sense. It's that a lot of times we get distracted because something resonates. Because again, the idea of wanting to serve God and not do anything against Him, that's a good thing. But unfortunately, people take advantage of that good thing, and they set up the scandalon, this trap.
Yep.
And they manipulate you with your own good intentions. So
I fell for it. So I fell for these traps too. So I'm speaking from experience. Because people want to do right by God, but
right. And they know that, and they use that to their own situation. So
we do have a question, Doug, before you leave.
Sure. Let's go for it.
Basak.
Can you break down Revelations 2:9-39? Can someone put that up on the screen?
The scripture. Can you put that up on? Oh yeah, 1 second. Revelation 2:9. Let me get it. I'll get the Bible.
So, do they mean chapter 2 verses 9? Like, I don't understand what they mean. That Revelation 29. The plus is throwing me off. That's not usually how you quote scriptures. I don't know what they mean by that. is it 2 verse 9 and then chapter 3 verse 9? Like, I don't understand.
Oh yeah, I'll pull it up. Oh, you got it? Just whatever version, doesn't matter. We'll just go to the one ESV.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So can someone put that on the screen so I can look at it? All right. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. I know the blasphemy of those opposing you. All right. So again, we start with genre. Like, what form of genre is Revelation written in? Right? It's a little bit of a hybrid, right? It is apocalyptic literature with some historical narrative as well, right? And we know that in the beginning of the book, this is Jesus, you know, a vision that John's having in the island of Patmos. And he's talking about these different churches at that time. And I forgot which particular church he's talking about here.
I think Smyrna.
Okay,
maybe.
Thank you. So he's telling them that to be careful of these particular people, that they say they're Jews, but they are the synagogue of Satan. Now, I know for some people, they like to interpret this as saying that these are the white Jews of today, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But here's the thing. You got to understand, this was written at a particular time for a particular people, right? So you have to put yourself in the shoes of the recipient of this letter, because this is a letter written to the churches at that time. So you have to now put yourself in the shoes of that audience. So imagine you're in late second century, or early second, late first. You're getting this letter, and you're hearing that there's some of you in your vicinity that are not Jews, but are the synagogue of Satan. What would be their understanding of that? Because we can't go by our understanding, because we're not there. We're in 2020, right? So we got to see it from their perspective, right? So there are Jews who are wicked, just like there were Jews who are righteous. There's bad people in every culture, right? And Jesus is basically telling them there's people amongst you that are not right, and you need to do something about that. And that's basically the gist of that text.
Yeah, exactly. We know that the Jews were mainly persecuting the early church, and the Jews that didn't ascribe to Christ, they were like Paul was once part of the synagogue of Satan.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's good the point you brought out there about being audience specific. Well, when you read the first verse in the book of Revelations, it says the things that must shortly come to pass. So things were, it was, the audience he was speaking to, these things were, going to happen, know.
And I mean, also just to stay on the Revelation thing for a while, you got to remember, this is a vision that John is having on his island. This is not reality. He's having a vision. That's why it's so symbolic. So, when he sees Jesus, and this is a scripture that a lot of, many Hebrews, not all, but many will interpret, as a proof text for Jesus being a black man, like his head and hair was white like wool, right? It's a vision, right? But not only do you have to understand the genre, you got to understand syntax, because there's a very powerful word in that verse, and. And it's a conjunction that connects two nouns together. So he's saying his head and his hair. It's like if I said I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I asked George what's in the sandwich. George can't just say jelly. He has to say, well, you have jelly and you also have peanut butter. So it's the same thing. His head and his hair was white. His head was white, and that doesn't mean that he's a white man either. Because when you look at the rest of the verse, it's all about him gleaming, right? His eyes are aflame. His feet are burning in a furnace. It's about him glowing. His whole aura is glowing with a sword coming out his mouth. This is not how Jesus walked around in downtown Galilee with a big Conan the Barbarian sword sticking out his mouth. It's symbolic. It's not an actual depiction of him.
Mm.
The closest we get to that is the transfiguration that we do see in the Gospels, right? But remember, Revelation is a vision. It is symbolic.
And he wanted Revelation 3:9. He says, "Thanks, brothers, for that first breakdown." And like you mentioned earlier, when you first was starting to deal with apologetics, all you did was read up some verses, and read down some verses. The keyword context.
Yeah. So what's this? His feet was like burnished bronze. Right. It is, when you look at it in the Greek, it's burning, as if you put it in, I guess what you call it, like a blacksmith, that cauldron of flame. So it's glowing, right? So the entire vision of Jesus is glowing, right? His head is white, hair white, eyes flame, feet glowing, right? That's what he's seeing. He's seeing this vision of Christ, and he's glowing. That's the idea. And if you're going to take that literal, then you're also going to take that sword in his mouth literal as well, because that's also part of the vision. And he's holding what? The 7 stars in his hand. That's literal too? Of course not. So you can't pick and choose what's literal and what's not in that verse. Either it's all literal or it's all symbolic. And if it's all literal, have fun with that, because you got to prove to me that Jesus actually walked around with 7 constellations and a big broad sword coming out of his mouth. I think the apostles who wrote the Gospels would have made mention of that. That's not a subtle thing. Someone walking around with a sword in their mouth.
It's a big deal, actually. It's like what they do with Deuteronomy 28:68. The ships are literal, but Egypt is symbolic.
Well, what I do with them when it comes to that, right? Because that's the go-to verse for many, not all, for many, for their claim of being a Hebrew. Like, well, how do you know you're Hebrew? Well, because I fit the curses. My question is, so did you take the oath? And they look at me strange, like, what oath? Well, Deuteronomy 27, they had to take the oath. We have the actual transcript of the oath in that chapter, where the Levites sit in one spot, the rest of Israel sits in another spot, and the Levites proclaim that if you take this curse will fall upon you, and the people will say, amen. And if you take this part, this curse will fall upon you, and the people will say, amen. And there's a whole litany in chapter 27 of, okay, amen. And amen means let it be.
Yes.
Right? Let me incur the curses. So if you want this, you have to actually, again, intent, right? Going back to what we talked about, intent. They were very aware that if they uphold this contract and they are in breach of this contract, they will incur curses. They were aware of that. They wasn't not aware. You can't wake up to a contract.
That's a good point, because I used to use this argument a lot. It's like, it says that you don't know who you are, but you've lost your identity. But then God's cursing you, but you don't know who you are.
Which makes God really not fair.
Yeah.
Because that's like me coming up to you, George, and I'm like, George, you owe me $50. And I'm like, how? I got this contract. It says here, you owe me $50. I'm like, I don't know about no contract. It's like, it says it right here. It's like, but I didn't sign it. It doesn't matter. You're waking up to it now. You're now made aware of this contract, so you owe me this money.
And then
that makes no sense.
And then I'll be like, Khan.
That's right. No, that's wrong.
It is wrong. And in fact, there's laws in the Bible. And this is the thing. If they knew the old covenant, they would never use this argument. I'm not trying to say like I'm a Torah expert.
Right.
But God has laws for when you do sins in ignorance. You know what I mean? He doesn't punish you. So that logic, well, I fit the curses. We don't know who we are, but God's cursing us. Like, hold on. The God says here that he doesn't, he's a just God.
Right.
How is that just?
Not at all. That's shady business right there.
Making God look bad.
And then also, now that we talk about the law, it's the law itself already assumes that you're going to break it, though. So when people say they can keep the law, actually the law itself says you can't, because in Leviticus 16, you have the Day of Atonement, right? Yom Kippur.
Exactly.
Every year, the high priest has to go into the Holy of Holies and sacrifice for the sins of who? The nation of Israel. Every year. That means every year the entire nation sins.
That's right.
So you can't keep the law. The law says you can't do it.
Otherwise, Yom Kippur wouldn't be in there, would it?
Exactly. So
exactly. He wanted Revelation 3 and 9, but I think in the context, once again, Basak, and Basak's cool. He's been on it before.
Cool.
He's very cordial. Brother, I don't know if it's a brother or sister, because that dialect Hebrew, I don't know which is a girl.
I will make them the synagogue. I will make them of the synagogue. Well, again, we're talking about a particular group of wicked people that was amongst the church, because these are written to churches, right? So in that particular church,
Philadelphia,
right, there were these dudes who were wicked, right? And it was a group of them, hence the term a synagogue. Synagogue is a gathering of believers, right? This is a wicked gathering of non-believers. There's some wordplay involved here that they would pick up on, right? They will be of this group, right? Because they are not who they're supposed to be. So that's it.
Thanks for the question, Pasak. Thank you once again. If I could plug a good book for those that are dealing with, if they are struggling with this pagan stuff, The Babylon Connection by Ralph Woodrow, I think it is. Yes, Ralph Woodrow. Been reading this one. He actually used, because a lot of these arguments people use comes from Alexander Hislop and the two Babylons, and then he wrote a book called Mystery Babylon.
He retracted that book.
Exactly. He retracted,
and he publicly apologized, which is amazingly humble, because so many people were buying that book still after so many years. So by him taking the book off the market, he's losing money. But because he wanted to be truthful and have integrity, he took it off the market, which is just so commendable. You know,
Babylon Connection. It's only like $15. If you've come out of a cult and you're unsure about some stuff, Jehovah Witness, whatever. Jehovah Witness, funny, they quote two Babylons. It's very
right. A lot of people do. I mean, I read it when I was young in the faith. I read that too. So I was actually into the whole, don't do Christmas, it's pagan, and I was one of those guys. But here's the thing, I kept reading, I kept researching, and then I realized, you know what, that position is faulty. Yeah. And I had to really use my mind, the discernment that God has given me, and I walked it out. And basically what I showed you today is what happened in my head. Okay, I got to find the terms. Okay, if this terms mean this, then am I really? And then I came to the realization, okay, it's not what I thought it was. And for a lot of people, it takes a certain amount of humility when you have that cognitive dissonance occur. So again.
And I was about to say something. We're not actually here to promote the celebration of Christmas, Easter, Halloween, Labor Day, whatever. Right. It's just to show that, if you are doing it in the right spirit, it doesn't matter.
There's no conflict. If you personally have there's commandments and then there's personal conviction. If you have a personal conviction not to practice, then by all means don't. But don't look down on your brothers and sisters who do. Right?
It is usually the case though, like especially with the Sabbath day thing. Right. But is there any future projects you want to plug before we?
So like I said, on May 25th, I'll be having Dr. Michael Heiser. The title will be the Unseen Realm of Apologetics. I'm also working on a 3-part series with Soldier of Christ Ministries and CMB the Ambassador, also known as Jordan Ortiz. He has a book out. He's done a commentary on the book of Galatians, right? Him being a former Judaizer.
We're hoping to get him on here. We're hoping.
Yeah, you got to. He's solid. That dude is super solid. And what we're gonna do is, because he's a former Judaizer, Colin is a former Seventh-day Adventist. So we're gonna have both of them on the show, and we're gonna do a 3-part series on the Sabbath. And the first video will be them just talking about how they got into it and how they left and the aftermath of them leaving it. The second video will be they will actually teach from the perspective of those belief systems and then turn around and refute those very systems. Then the third video is when we're going to be completely nerdy and we're going to go into the ancient Near East context of the Sabbath and what the Sabbath meant at that time. So it's going to be a 3-part series. It's going to be really, really dope. So.
Oh, that sounds good. I'll be definitely tuning into that.
Yes, sir.
Brothers and sisters, let's if you were here live, obviously would give you a round of applause, but I'm sure they're clapping at home. But thank you once again, brother. Hopefully we get you back on here again.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you for asking, man. That meant a lot.
Oh, no.
Thank you so much.
I remember watching this like in the last year, and then during this COVID-19 time, I'm especially with our group and the audience, I'm trying to promote people who have sound doctrine and just a good way with bringing out the gospel.
Right. And Sister Monet said, she's funny. She said, exactly, BK, no picking and choosing. The key word is not wool. It's about Jesus and his glorified body. They want so bad to make Jesus be Wesley Snipes from Vampire in Brooklyn. Actually, that's Eddie Murphy. That's not Wesley Snipes. That's Eddie Murphy. Wesley Snipes was Blade.
Oh yeah, Blade.
But
two good movies. I like Vampire.
Yes, Blade was good. The first Blade was, and part 2 was good. Part 3, not so much.
Now, as soon as I saw, what's his name, Reynolds in there.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds.
Like, yeah, it's not. Yeah.
It ruined it.
Yeah.
But thank you once again, bro. God bless you. God bless your family, and God bless everybody out there. We're gonna finish off with our benediction song. Let me put that up. Thank you guys for sticking with us.
Now unto him who is able to keep you from falling, and present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. To the only wise God, our Savior, be glory and majesty, dominion